And so I took it and I started the process with the energy centers. Yeah, exactly like that. Was taking the oils. I don't even know if you were doing that, but it was exactly like that. Was taking it and just like, I think the top of his head and his brows and his mouth, his nose for being, I think the portal for his breath to enter his body, something like that, and his lips for the kind words he had spoken and the encouraging words, his shoulders for carrying so much in his life, something like that. And I just worked my way down. And you were there with me. And that was, I think, of everything, the point where it really felt like a funeral because I was just speaking about him now to someone else that was there. That felt the most like a funeral. It was almost his eulogy, you could say. Um, what was different though is that I got further down his body. That I felt a conflict between what I was expecting and wanting myself to say and what I was actually feeling. And I think this was the key thing about why a script and a eulogy and an audience and can be actually bad because I actually started to get really angry at him. I had been angry at him for a very long time and I had repressed it, not very successfully, but to care for him because I just knew from our relationship it was just not something I could really talk with him about. I just didn't. I felt that it would really hurt him, and I didn't want to do that. But at that point, I was getting to the point of his legs, and the statement was with that, like, we honor Phil's legs for carrying him through the challenges of his life. And I had some qualms with that. I had my own disagreement with that statement. And so I actually, I think I said something like, I can't do this. And instead, what I wanted to do was be really angry. And you said, okay, well, that's all right. I think eventually you left so I could just say what was on my mind, but you stayed for some of it. I just started to let it rip. And I let myself say to him what I've always wanted to say to him for a long time. I had a lot of anger with him over the years, and I finally let it rip. And that's the difference, I think, between a eulogy in front of people and this was that in the eulogy, you're expected to say, oh, he was an angel. Oh, he was so beautiful. Oh, he could do no wrong. Oh, I'm gonna miss him so much. And you only talk about these beautiful qualities that they had, but it's not this full picture of them. And by that same token, since it's not the full picture of them, you might not get the full experience of your emotions in your relationship to this person because you're only expected to talk about I mean, I'll sum it all up in the phrase, don't speak ill of the dead, which was partly where I struggled with my mother for so long was I had this relationship to her that had a lot of emotions that weren't just happy. And I couldn't talk about it with people because it's like, don't speak ill of the dead. It's kind of not an easy conversation starter to sit next to someone and go, so I really am mad at my dead mom. It's not like you can't do that. But what I appreciated about you is that you were very flexible with it. You just went, okay, like let it rip. And the same as my doula friend who had sent the script was like, yeah, if you're angry, be angry. Like let whatever's there there. That is the point. It's not to feel lovey dovey and sweet and happy. It's so that you do feel whatever's there. And I just remember you came in and I was sitting at the table and you said something to me like how you doing and I just like I started like shouting at him. Do you remember
Uh-huh.
that? And you were just what I like to say you were just fine with it, you were welcoming for that. I just started shouting at him. I was very angry. And then I did the ritual eventually one more time. I felt like I had come to an understanding of my anger, and that I did eventually complete it to my satisfaction. And then that night you had left. I went for a walk. I came back and I was with them again. And I broke down and cried. But I wasn't crying for his death this time. I was crying for our life together and how difficult it had been. And because I think to this day, because I let myself feel that anger towards him, I reached the point where I realized um, that he and I both suffered so much in that society, in that world, just surviving. And that it couldn't have been how I wanted it to be between us, where it was easy breezy and we weren't struggling to make money, we weren't struggling to survive, we weren't stressed all the time. I realized that finally that was impossible, and I cried and I cried. I think I wailed then too. You weren't there, but I felt like that night I went mad, like I went a bit crazy with grief over his life this time, over the fact of what we went through together. So I think that because I let myself be angry, I then could get to my grief over the fact that I was angry that things were hard. I was rightfully angry that things were hard. I was angry at a lot that he um, dropped the ball on. But then I reached the grief stage of going, well, of course, like we suffered a lot, both of us. We suffered so much together. And to me, that was really important that I had that with him still around, because I kept speaking to him through the anger and also through the grief. I wasn't just crying alone in my room. This was still a very relational thing that was happening that could not have been done while he was alive, while he was breathing. I still think he was there up to that point and receiving this in a way that he couldn't have been while he was alive. And
Mind if I jump in real quick?
yeah, because I'm I can't think of anything else that day.
Yeah, to me it felt not just like he was there, but also I get this sense around death that there's something where the whole lineage energy is there. Again,
Yeah,
this is my meaning making and how I experience things and stuff, and I'm not gonna like
yeah,
push this view on anybody, but a way I tend to experience it and was experiencing it that day because it's like as the death is happening, things in the lineage energy need to be rearranging anyway, right? Like there's this huge
yeah,
transition happening in it. And so my sense was like you were like incredibly engaged with this whole family energy that was very extra present right then in that moment anyway. And I
yeah.
also just want to say that, like, I'm really feeling something strongly as you're talking about it, which is that there were two moments in particular over that week where I noticed you do something that was like incredibly shamanic in terms of um, the way that energy was moving. Like, one
Mm,
thing we didn't mention on Saturday, the day that he was dying, was like, well, you did mention reading that Walt Whitman poem to him. I had noticed that like the energy in the room felt a little bit stuck. And you went and sat next to him and you didn't just put your hand on his chest and his heart, you actually like you did this kind of like really beautiful, soft but not like soft but strong, kind of like rubbing his heart. And then you recited that Walt Whitman passage that you referenced before, like from memory as you were doing that. And I was
mm.
sitting in a different part of the room, and the entire energy in the room changed from my perspective. Like things had been kind of stuck, and yeah, the whole active dying period was kind of this marathon. Like you mentioned him being a marathon rower at the beginning, and it was like
Yeah,
this mar this marathon that he was
yeah,
doing so fast but gracefully. And I think part of that was like
yeah,
things started to get stopped up, and then you came in and did this like really shamanic, just through your like presence and attunement, and I think touching his heart, like everything started moving again. And I think this anger piece that you're bringing up, I'm so glad that you're talking about it. That was the other time that week that, like, I think your attunement to what you were actually genuinely, honestly feeling and like what was happening in this situation around you and your willingness, again, that like strength of opening yourself up to like what is actually here, even if it's fucking
Yeah.
inconvenient. Like, wow,
Yeah.
I'm actually really angry with my dad right now, and it feels like he's here and is receptive to
Yeah.
like, let's do this. And
Yeah. Yeah.
it was very intense, and I think it changed and opened things up in this like whole way that most people would not go anywhere near.
Yeah.